Literally, I was sitting outside eating a slice of pizza at lunch, and I went, and I like gasped. And I was like, oh, now I know you're a bad guy. And nothing has come from that. Welcome to the club. This is Cracking the Spine. It's a podcast for people who love books but struggle to find anyone to talk to about them. So every episode, I crack open a book for the first time and tell you what I think as I go. No prep, usually no prior knowledge, just how I feel about it. And if you've already read the book I'm reading, I'd love to hear from you. At the start of every episode, I would love to read a comment, or maybe we'll have some voice recordings that I can play of your opinion on what I said in the last episode, or something you really liked about the book or the author or whatever. And I'd like to start the episode with hearing from you guys. So if you'd be interested in commenting on the books I'm reading, then go ahead and leave a comment. That's the club part of this. It's a book club. So your voice on the show, talking about books you love, or even books you didn't love so much. Or we're open to all opinions, as long as they are kind. Quick note, a spoiler warning. I can't really talk about a book without talking about what happens in the book. So, just if you want to be reading the book that I'm reading, then maybe pause, read the book, and come back. And I think you'd have more fun that way, because you know what's going to happen. But I can see it both ways. Okay. So the book I'm reading now, let me tell you how I got here. The book I'm reading now is a Jack Reacher book, which I've never read. Jack Reacher. I don't really know anything about it. I just knew there was a TV show made, which I think when I'm thinking of that show, I might be thinking Jack Ryan. Is that a show? I don't know. I don't really watch a lot of shows. But that was why I picked it up. I was sitting at lunch one day and I was like, it'd be really nice to have a book to read right now. So I opened up the library app and just, hit the filter of what's available right now. And then this popped up and I was like, oh, I kind of recognize that name. Let's give it a shot. Okay. So I'm currently about halfway through the book. And I really liked the book at the beginning. It was, I was jumping around to keep the suspense up and just jump between characters. I had a little of a hard time registering names because we jumped around so much. It'd be like Nathan was doing this, and then it would jump over to Jack, and then to this other guy, and this other guy, and this other situation, and then it would pop back to Nathan, and it would be like, wait, who's Nathan again? Am I supposed to know this person, or is it a new person? And it was kind of hard for me to follow, just because I kind of suck with names in the first place. I do better when I read the names, so it's a little more helpful in books. But I have this weird thing that when I'm reading a book, I don't recognize the pronunciation of someone's name. I recognize how it looks. So when I read Harry Potter for the first time, and people were like, it's Hermione, or it's Hermione, or it's Hermione, or whatever the debate was back then before the movies were made. I was just like, it's the H name. It has these letters in it. And I must be a very visual person. So It helps that it's in written form and I'm not listening to it as an audiobook, but it still was like, wait, what? And as we've gone on, I've been able to be like, okay, this is Jack, the main character. This is the main sub character, and then this is the main bad guy. But he's not a main bad guy. He's like an adjacent bad guy that they've never interacted with. But I assume they will at some point. But those are like the only 3 names that I've been able to pin down. And everyone else is like, okay, this is a person. And I have to really think about the context of what I'm reading. Is this a person that's new? A person that I know? A person that's going to interact with the person I knew, but it's from their perspective? It's just real confusing. Which I appreciate the attempt at suspense. I did feel the suspense at the beginning. And I think the bouncing around kind of tapers off as you go further in. But I just struggled with keeping everybody. It's like when you watch a show and you're like, that person looks exactly like that person. So I can't tell. Like we were watching The Other Bennett Sister the other day, and Lizzie and Jane looked so similar. And they weren't the main characters, so you didn't get as much time with them, but it was like, oh wait, who's talking? Is that Lizzie? Wait, no, it's Jane. It's very hard to tell them apart. Okay. So I like that. And then I was intrigued by the character of Jack Reacher. Because he's got all these aggressive skill sets. But when you're in his mind, it's very logical and like morally centered. You know, it's just like, I do this because it's right. But he doesn't like think through that this is right. He just does it. And it was strange to see a character like that. In this being the first book I've read about him, which the book's called Exit Strategy, and it's by Andrew Child and Lee Child. So that makes me think it's one of the later books. And so they've had some sort of development, maybe? But yeah, at the beginning it was like, wow, this juxtaposition of, being able to rip people's arms off and, being a, like, neutral good guy. Like, he's not a hero out to save everyone, but he's good. I feel like as it has gone on through the storyline, it's starting to feel a little stale. Like he has not changed the entire book so far. There's no arc. And then in that sense, so far it's feeling a little episodic, which, I like episodic. Star Trek TNG is very episodic. And then you watch Deep Space Nine and it's like, wow, that's very different. But I love both, and I love them both for different reasons. So if that's just the way Jack Reacher books are, because there's 20 of them, which I don't know, then sure, that's fine. Because you know who he is, you know what he's going to do, but you don't know how he's going to solve the puzzle or whatever. So that was interesting. There were a few moments where I like reading mystery novels and like puzzle novels. Because there's like thriller and suspense, and then there's like murder mystery where, everyone's having sex with everyone and murdering people. I don't particularly like, gore, horror, murder, but I like mysteries that are puzzles where I, as the reader, have to figure it out. And so there's an opening scene where Jack comes into a coffee shop and he sits at a table and there's an abandoned newspaper there and he reads it. And then he gets in all these interactions. And then the other guy comes in, Nathan, and interacts with Jack. As Jack is walking out the door, he like bumps him and like sneaks something into his pocket. And that's the entire interaction in the cafe. And then later, Nathan's upset and he's yelling at Jack and he's like, Next time you sit in a cafe and read an abandoned newspaper, you'll think about how you ditched me and I died or whatever. And my mystery brain was like, you didn't know. How do you know he was reading an abandoned newspaper? You weren't in the coffee shop. You must be the bad guy, because you know too much. And as it's gone on, it's like, maybe not. Maybe that was just a continuity slip. So that was fun. I was sitting outside eating a slice of pizza at lunch, and I went, and I like gasped. And I was like, oh, now I know you're a bad guy. And nothing has come from that, so maybe it didn't. So far, I don't know, there was like little things that, like situations where Jack came in and he like fixed the situation as he fixes things, with strength and his morality. But there's Strickland and his little base in a salt mine or wherever he was. Limestone mine? Does it matter? And he's just kind of has his own story, and it has not connected with the main characters at all. And it's like, okay, I know this guy's a bad guy. Like his morality is not firmly there. And it's like, but why do I care? It has not been shown to me yet. And then there's all these little like bad guys that Jack takes care of, quote unquote. And I don't really care about them either. Like I cared about them at the beginning, and now they've just kind of like disappeared into the background of the story. But yeah. So far, there's this guy that wants to get out of this shady dealings he's got with people, and he was supposed to meet some big guy in a cafe, but that big guy got murdered on the way to the cafe, and Jack was there, and he's a big guy, so he bumps into him and puts a little note in his pocket as he's walking out. And then Jack reads the note, and it's like, meet me at this abandoned warehouse. I want out. And Jack, being, morally good, was like, oh, well, I guess I'll meet him at this abandoned warehouse, even though my gut instinct is it's a trap. But the poor guy thinks that I'm somebody else, so I should return his note to him. Which, like, fits his thought processes. But it's it's so good that it's like childish good. Or childlike good. Childish sounds negative. So then he goes to this warehouse and he like checks it out, and then he goes to the concert that he came into town to see. But he has like so far his character is just kind of passionless. So I don't know why he cared about this particular concert. In my mind, I see him at the concert and he's just standing there, arms crossed like a secret agent or bodyguard. And he's like, I'm not here for the music, is what he looks like. But somehow he appreciates this band, even though he has like he doesn't have any devices, he doesn't have a home, he's always on the move. It's like, first of all, where did you hear this music? Like, if you heard it on the radio, that makes sense. But, like, how did that turn into, I'm going to go to this town to see this band specifically? It just kind of was interesting. So then he leaves the concert, goes back to the abandoned warehouse at the appointed time, and watches the guy come in. And then the guy, like, panics and shoots a rat. So he's, like, scared enough to be trigger happy, but he also like shot the rat in one shot perfectly. So he's like, maybe I shouldn't give him back his note, because he might shoot me. Because he's like hovering in the rafters, just watching this guy wander around with his gun and his flashlight. And then he like sits. He sits in the warehouse, and Jack just watches him, and he's like, well, I can't leave, but I don't want to give him his notebook back anymore. So I'm just going to sit here. He just sits there for like an hour staring at this guy. Anyways, and then finally he's like, oh, what the heck? And reveals himself, and he's like, I'm not the person you want. Sorry, try again. And then like leaves. And then this guy, Nathan, sees him not get beat up, be attacked by all these thugs, and Jack beats them all up. And he's like, oh, you'd be a great bodyguard while I try to get out of this sticky situation I'm in. Which I'm not quite sure what's happening there, because he's like, some guy showed up at my door and said, I'll pay all your gambling debts if you apply for this job. But he doesn't know who that guy is. But the guy that he was texting to say, I want to get out, he knows who that guy is. So, like, who's this other guy? And why wasn't it this little guy in the first place? And why do we care about the little guy if it's the big guy that we're worried about? This was just kind of hard to pinpoint who I should be worried about. So then he gets attacked, and the thugs like say, here's your nephew, and we're gonna gouge his eyes out if you don't do what we tell you to. So he goes running back to Jack, and he's like, hey, you're good at fighting. Will you protect me? Because now I can't leave because they've got my nephew, or they know where he is. There's like a picture of him on the playground. And Jack's like, I don't care about you, you stupid. You got into this mess. I'm gonna get on this bus and leave. And that's where he said his comment about abandoned newspaper. And then Jack's like, you know what? I think I am gonna help you. For the nephew. This is interesting. He's just so, he feels emotionless. Like if I were watching him in a show, right now my picture of him is like a robot. It's just this really powerful machine that has a basic line of code that's not absolute, but is very basic. And it just like, this is how I function. Does this meet my parameters? Can I tweak it so it meets my parameters? Okay, I will do the thing now. It's just very interesting. It's such a juxtaposition. At the beginning, being like, oh, it's such a cool, he's at odds with himself. And then it was just kind of, he is a robot. So yeah. So now they're trying to figure out what's being smuggled in, because the guy's job is at a port. And like he works at a shipyard, and he logged in as somebody else and checked where this particular shipment was being stored at the shipyard, and then that somebody else got murdered. And that's why he wanted out. So now they're trying to figure out why. Which now he's like, it's the CIA. I think it's the CIA, and they're moving some fancy tech in, but these bad guys that I technically work for want it for themselves. But it's like, the bad guys have your nephew. So why does it help your nephew to figure out that the CIA is trying to kill you? Anyways, and that's why I stopped reading today. And I, like on my app, I could see how far I've gotten. It's like 50%. I feel like a lot has happened, but not much has happened. Like the Strickland character, who's obviously bad and is like trying to start wars so that he can be paid to stop them. He's obviously a bad guy, and he's obviously doing bad things. And Jack would not be happy with this guy. But he might convince himself not to interfere because he hasn't done anything to him yet, or some other interesting reasoning. So yeah, that's where I am. And I hope the puzzle wraps up well. Like, I want it to, like, mirror itself, where it started, like, choppy and jumping around to get the suspense, and then now we're in the middle where you get more information. And I'm hoping that the end goes back to the choppy and jumping around and, like, oh no, we're left with a cliffhanger, but this person's doing this, and this person over there, and it's all coming together. And I just don't see where Jack is going to end up at the end of this. They're obviously going to figure it out. Well, in a typical book, they would figure it out, and they'd stop the bad guys, and then Nathan would say, yay, my family is safe, and I'm never going to get involved in crap stuff again. No more gambling, no more drinking, no more taking jobs because somebody told me to. I want to be free. And then Jack's going to be like, I don't care. I will now board the bus to who knows where. And that will be the end. It's like RoboCop. Granted, I've never seen RoboCop, but the word fits. Where he's like robotic, but morally, you know. But yeah, that's it so far. I am wondering why is it Lee Child and Andrew Child? Like, why is there, like, is it just there's so much demand for these books that they got to bring on a co-writer? Or, like, would I have had more fun with a previous book? Or is this just kind of how it is? And he's matching the style pretty well. I don't know. Okay. By the next episode, I'm going to get all the way through the book and see if my predictions were correct. And I have a question. So if you've read Reacher books before, what made you pick up the first one? And if you haven't, like, what would it take for you to pick up one? Like, are you going to pick up one? I feel like I did not sell it very well. But I do appreciate, I feel like if I were to sit down and watch the show, I wouldn't like it. It would be too violent, especially since he's so emotionless. Because that's my thing about violence, is that, especially in like superhero movies, they're like destroying buildings and smashing cars. In my head, like, there are people in there. There are people being injured and dying, and the movie and the character is playing it like we knocked over a Lego set. And that bugs me. And I feel like if I tried to watch a Jack Reacher show and him being such a robot, smashing people's heads in, that would bother me. But I feel like because the point of the book is not, you know, his violence, then I can stomach it a bit more. Or maybe my brain is just like skimming over those bits faster, which I do enjoy in reading. It's like, if I don't like this part, or this part is stressing me out, then I can just like speed read it and get it over with. But when you're watching something, you like have to watch it all or you miss stuff. Anyways. So, what made you start reading Reacher books? Is this a good Reacher book? And would you ever read Reacher books if you haven't read them already? Okay, well, that's it for this episode. And it's back to my books. I'll be reading. Bye.